Wonderful, thank you very much. So Sophie's going to answer some questions in the Q&A. So if you do have any other questions, Sophie will be in there for a couple more minutes typing up some answers. So please feel free to get them in while you have Sophie available to you. And we're going to welcome Dan Etheridge from the National Bee Unit. He's going to do a bit of talk around the Asian hornet update.
Good morning, guys. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep, all good.
Okay, hopefully I'm just sharing my screen. Is that starting to share with you?
Looks like it is. It's just taking a moment to load. There we go. We can see it. We just need to have it in the slideshow mode now.
Okay. Okay, hopefully that's working for you. Well, good
Can you
morning.
pop
My
it
name's
in
Dan.
slideshow mode, Dan?
It is in slideshow mode or it isn't?
Oh,
Sorry.
it isn't in slideshow mode yet.
Okay, it is on my end, so
Oh,
maybe
okay.
just give that a
Ah,
second.
there we go. We can
Is
see
it
your
there
notes as
now? And
well.
I've got my laser pointer showing as well, hopefully.
Yep.
Okay. All
Dan,
right.
Dan, we can see it in presentation view. If you click at the top of the screen where it says display settings, or
Display.
else everyone's going to see your notes on your next slides coming too.
Uh,
So there's a little arrow next to display settings. You should be able to turn
Well,
on.
I can't even see display settings. Sorry.
There,
Display. So
yeah.
there we go. Okay. Sorry. What am I clicking on there?
Swap those over, and then you should be able to. We should all be able to see
That
just the slides. Perfect.
is that the one? Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
good to
Sorry.
go.
Sorry, guys. Right. I think we're there. So I don't normally use Zoom. It's a bit. I'm normally an MS Teams guy. Um, well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name's Dan Etheridge with the National Bee Unit. Um, and I'm going to talk to you today about our response to Asian Hornet and a bit of an update of what went on in 25. And hopefully we'll get into this for you now. I know we need to probably make up a bit of time, but I'm just going to cover a bit about the government strategy and some of our wider support that we've had. A bit of a recap and a bit of a history lesson because I think it probably needs to be done. We'll talk about some of the track and trace methods and, of course, the nest destructions and some of the technologies that we've been using. And then we've got a wee case study at the end just to talk about. So again, the National Bee Unit is part of the Animal and Plant Health Agency, which is part of DEFRA. But our bread and butter, our primary work is delivering a statutory inspection service for honeybee pests and diseases and exotic pests. And at the end of that, we kind of got tacked on this yellow-legged hornet response. I think the government figured that we deal with, stingy things, and we would probably know about hornets. So this has been within our remit now for well over 10 years. So at the moment, the response is government led and funded, as you probably know. And our calls are all triaged, so we get the reports that are triaged through UK CEH. Our track and trace is done by the National Bee Unit and wider APHA, and the destruction is done by the wildlife team in combination. And all of our scientific work, our nest analysis is done by Fairer Science Limited, that are a private company that contract to us. So just as an overview, APHA has got 3,000 employees across the UK, 550 field inspectors that we draw upon. Obviously, we haven't got 550 trained in Asian hornet work, but they generally come from the wildlife team, the National Bee Unit, non-native species, plant health, and animal health. And then we've got a contingency bunch of office bots in the background that help us with resourcing and so on. So just as a recap of what a yellow-legged Asian hornet is, it's the one on the right there, of course. I'm sure you all know this, and the European hornet there on the left. And again, a history lesson here. Came into Europe, mainland Europe, southern France in 2004, and has since basically spread all across Europe and now into the United Kingdom. And just as I always like to throw this in. So Belgium had their first report in 2016, as did we. And then this series of slides here just shows you the progression of nests over the same period of time that they've been facing. So, when you see our maps in a second, you'll recognise there's a slight difference in picture. So here we were, blissfully going along from 2016 with our first incursion that was in the Tetbury area over here. And then we just muddled along up until 2022 with the odd nest here. You can see, ones and twos, and the most we ever had was 2018 when we had 4 nests in the 1 year. And then after 2022, at the end of the year, things changed a bit, and then we leapt into 2023, where we went on to 72 nests that year. So it was a big change. And if you notice at the previous slide, nothing down here in Kent over previous years, and then in 2023, lots down here. So yeah, like I say, 72 nests that year. Obviously, a big learning curve for us as well. We had to change our response. And at the end of that year, the nest I've got circled there was our very late nest that we know was obviously our problem child that would have produced gynns and queens that year. And then in 2024, we just had 24 nests, which was quite sort of unexpected, but I'm sure you guys in the pest control industry noticed that other Vespers were low that year. It was a low year for wasps and so on. And then that we expected that to be in line with with what we would see in hornets for that year as well. And it was 24 nests. But we did have 2 nests here that we obviously had found that were related, and also so they related to previous nests in 2022. So obviously this focuses our spring surveillance then for the next year. So roll on now to 2025. You can see these areas where we're heavily trapping for surveillance to the north and south there of Kent. And we've obviously got that takes a lot of work. So 43 APHA staff, normally probably 10 or so people working per day, but that's 5,500 trap checks over that period of time there. And in total then, in the spring of 2025, we just had 5 queens. So all that work equals 5 queens in traps that year. And obviously, as you know, if you catch the queen, it's 1 less nest to get. But queen trapping's probably not the best use of time for us, because you're just trying to find 1 individual. And obviously what we also found again is from the nests previously I just mentioned that we did find queens related to those nests, but only 1 in each spot. So 1 in Udimore, 1 in Coldwood. So we had 23 other sightings from around and about. That was conservatories and that type of thing. And then we ended the spring there with 4 embryo nests, these little tiny nests here. 6 hornets in conservatories and 5 in homes as well. And these are all reported through the Asian Hornet Watch app. I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. So these are our sightings and samples. It's just to give you a rough idea of how things work, but those samples are reported. And on the left here, so we've got this ArcGIS app and layers that we use for recording all sorts of things. And one of those is our sample collections. So we can tell here if samples have been collected. If it's outstanding, field to action just means that there's a report and a sample waiting to be collected. These ones are reports. The purples are reports that don't have a sample associated with it. It's just maybe a photograph, and then we can respond to them as and when and change the colours as they go. So in total, we had 527 samples in 25, so it's quite a lot. A lot of these would be associated with the same nest, so just to, these would be many sightings all based around 1 nest. And also all those samples are collected, barcoded, each trap is barcoded, each sample's barcoded, and that all goes off to our Ferra lab for analysis. So the Asian Hornet Watch app here, just to give you an idea of some of the calls that we get over the course of the year. You can see here sort of over 4,000 peak calls at these times, and these are normally associated with media events, or we've been on the news or something like that, and obviously the call volume goes up. But again, I just noted there that only 5.9% of the reported sightings are actually accepted as correct. That's normally got a decent photograph attached to it. And you can also see here by year some of the reports that we get. 2024 was a really big year for us. We did lots of television and media in 2024. And obviously that year we ended up with very few nests. But anyway, it obviously worked. But don't forget, all those calls have to be triaged down. They have to be looked at and accepted by UKCEH, and then that's passed on to us once it's confirmed that yes, it is a photo of a yellow-legged hornet. And this is just an overview of our system, then our dashboard that we use, so we can see all of our sightings, all of our confirmed nests, all of our inspectors and people on the ground that are available. Really good system to us to use for organisation. So the current nest that ended up in 2025 was 162 nests. So 39 of those are primary and embryo nests. So don't forget, they build this little embryonic nest first, which might only be the size of a cricket ball. And then often that will turn into a primary nest that ends up lower down in the normally situated lower down in hedges. That will often grow to about the size of maybe a football at the biggest, really. But occasionally those primary nests are formed into secondary nests as well, which are obviously much bigger. And for rebuild, you might be interested by that. Well, Asian hornets have a tendency to rebuild if the nest is disturbed, it's incorrectly killed, or for many reasons that can happen. If it's, if you people have fired shotguns at it, that type of thing. Not us, by the way. That's not in our. That's just, we've heard folks on the continent doing so. These nests, if you just cut them out of the tree, the hornets will disperse and they will rebuild a nest as well. So, and we had situations where, for whatever reason, we had 4 rebuilt nests as well. 10 were unable to be removed. Often they would be in buildings that we could just kill them and not remove them. And then we also had one down here, one outlier down here on the Scilly Isles and on Tresco as well. So this is quite interesting. Particularly, I speak to pest controllers a lot at these various events, and I always think this is an interesting discussion to have, because it's quite often believed that these nests are reported to us. Well, they're not nests that get reported. They're sighting, or very rarely, they're sightings that get reported. So out of all the nests that we've had since we started this, which is 271 in total, only 14 have been reported as nests. All of the other 257 have all been reported as singular hornets, and we've had to track the nest, and that's how it's ended up getting to where it is. So these aren't nest reports. And this image on the right here is just an image of our tracking system that we use to find the nests, which I'll talk more about in a second. And obviously you can see some of the larger nests that we have. So where do we find those nests? Pretty much anywhere. We've absolutely had them subterranean. They're not normally known to nest underground. We've certainly had them underground. Here's these little embryo nests that will be in sheds or protected areas low down before they go on to build their big secondary nest. This was one here in a beehive. A couple more examples here. This was one that was this is a secondary nest now, not a primary, outside of a disabled gentleman's back door. Luckily, he doesn't use that door much, because if he did, he would have got quite the shock because that nest was attached to the door, so it would have actually pulled the nest apart had he have opened the door. But again, this is a nest that we've tracked to here. This hasn't been reported to us. And likewise, none of these nests have been reported to us. All of them have been tracked to those points. So that's just below the window there, low down in ivy. But by a long, long way, the vast majority of these nests are secondary nests that are much, much bigger, many more hornets in the air to report by the time they've got to a secondary nest high up in the tree. And that's really where we find the main of them. And obviously all these nests then we collect these nests, or we are at the moment, we're collecting them and have been since we started. And they go to FARA where they analyse the nests and look at what stage the nest is, if it's into sexual reproduction, if there's guineas and queens that have been produced from that nest. So just a little overview of our structure here. So our operational lead is Peter Davis, soon to retire. He's the guy that kind of spins the plates and does all the stuff that needs to be done at the top. And then normally we've got forward operating base admin support in between. I normally fall into this area here as one of the sort of technical leads and incident commanders. That filters down then to our field teams. And then the kill teams, which I also operate in, are part of our unit as well. And we've obviously got tree surgeons that get involved also. And then just to mention that obviously we've got our in-house trained staff that obviously don't just do hornets. They are people that are trained in other, often quite related to sort of pest control, but they're, I think again, often the pest control industry have often asked why they aren't involved. Well, often it's, we do actually have a team of pest controllers, if you like. I mean, these guys are out killing stuff all the time. They're firearms trained and so on that are doing, invasive ducks and all sorts of other things that they do. So they're very used to working and in this kind of destruction process of anything really. And just to give you a sight of sort of our tools on the ground here, the various traps we use to trap the hornets. We use this trap. It's the most simplest trap, cheapest one you can get. And we can use that in many configurations. We can use it as a kill trap, just a live capture trap, so that because we don't want to kill everything that we catch, we're about tracking these hornets, not always killing them. We can open them up to an open bait station, so we want to be feeding the hornets to get them in. And also some of these, this is what we would normally be tracking from, very simple plastic box with some bait in and something for the hornets to land on. And we also use these sprays for spritzing around the environment to get the bait into the air. So it's not just a case of trapping for killing. And this is just the process that we use for an overview of what we use for track and trace. Combined with our, so we've got this app that we use now that we've developed ourselves that gives us measurements and lines. So this will actually, we can input data into this and it will give us a very accurate pinpoint as to where the hornet is. And the hornets all feed, we're exploiting their Achilles heel here, if you like, because they're regular feeders. They often feed at certain times a day, but we can exploit that and then easily track them back to the nest using this method. And we've used this for a very, very long time. But we've also got some technology available to us these days. This is a kit from Roborn Nature in the Netherlands. And this is what we use of our tracking and tagging kit. So we've got plenty of guys trained on this now. I did the testing for it early on and found it to be very useful. And it's ended up being a real game changer for us. Bottom right here, 160 milligrams for the actual tag. And this slide here gives you a bit of an idea of how it works. So it clips on this image here. You can see it kind of hooks on like a little bit of a coat hanger over the petiole of the hornet. We obviously have to collect the hornet and weigh it. It has to meet a certain weight, over 300, or I prefer 350 milligrams for weight of the hornet. We know they're going to be strong enough to carry the tracker back to the nest. And we can also sometimes retrieve the tracker as well, again, because the hornet will be doing that regular flight, and we can often collect the tracker back at the bait station, or we can have a magnet back at the bait station. Even if we're not there, it's unattended, the hornet will get stuck onto the magnet back at the bait station. But yeah, so it's not easy to put on, but this tube here allows us to pick the hornet up by its abdomen. We can just clip onto the abdomen and then hook the tracker over. And this is an image of the receiver. I think that's self-explanatory. The more green lights you've got, the closer it is. But it's a very accurate band. We used to use radio telemetry for this, and the signal's much more bouncy. This is a much more direct signal. And some other technology that we use is this product from Vesper AI. This is AI cameras that can basically do your job of monitoring when you're not there. So this reservoir at the bottom of the trap, the unit. Sorry, my laser pointer is a bit of a lag on the laser pointer there. Is filled with our bait, and then it's wicked up through the sponge here. So that can be left for 4 or 5 days before it needs to be refilled. Depends how many hornets or wasps are feeding on it, but obviously the camera is working all the time, and it will. Then unfortunately we have to visit the unit to download the information, but it does. You can check that and see if any hornets have been there in just a couple of minutes. So on to treatments. Obviously, this is something that you guys are probably keen to know about. Got lots of photos here to share with you, just to give you an idea of what we do. Obviously, there's lots of cherry picker work at times, and you can see this image here is quite extreme. And obviously, we've got these long poles, carbon fiber poles, that we use to inject the nest. Largely permethrin-based treatments. I'm going to talk to you about the treatments in a second. And just to say, I'm not I'm just listing the products that we use. I think it's only fair to do so, obviously. But as like the BBC, we are a government organisation that can't really promote particular products, and that's not what we're doing here. I'm just simply giving the information that is available, just for openness as to what we use. Like I say, we're often, for the most part, permethrin-based products, or all permethrin-based products actually. So obviously we used to use the bendiocarb, the Ficam-D. Obviously that's long gone now. I don't need to tell you the backstory about that. So now we're sort of more using the permethrin P5, the Vulcan P5, sorry, permethrin-based powder. And that we actually find that does. I know that I hear all the time from the pest control guys that there's some issues with this for wasps and so on. But for us, believe it or not, because of the way we apply this powder, and you'll see that in a moment, we actually have a lot of success with this powder. It's very effective for us. We do use the digrain sprays. This is kind of what we carry this with us when we're up in trees and such, as a bit of a close combat spray, and it's more for protection of staff, I guess you might say, if we needed to, as a knockdown spray, and also the per-biochoc that will often be used in buildings and so on, as that does seem to be quite effective for that. So obviously we need access to these nests, and these are images from the field here. Myself and a colleague here working away. These nests are very, very high in the trees, not easy to get to at all. And we've got a pole system we use is a 10 and a 20 meter reach, and we have got a longer one available now to us as well, more than 20 meters. And that takes some doing, I can tell you. And for that, we will use the Wasp Pole Pro. I think hopefully you can see the little video on the right. That's that pole at full height I think it's easy once the sun gets in your eyes there, you can't actually see, but then the pole extends way up into the canopy. And the nest is actually right. The nests are normally about 3 or so feet from the tips of the trees, and obviously this pole is very easy for our tree surgeons to use because it can also. This is the shorter pole that can be carried up into the canopy because the powder is in the end of the pole, the gas is in the trigger system at the handle, so it's really easily handled around the tree as well. And then this nozzle here is an add-on, which is a liquid nozzle as well that we can use in structures and so on that can get the liquid into the nest quite easily as well in a fan motion. But this nozzle here, I think, is probably the secret as to why we get such good efficacy from the Vulcan P5 powder, because this goes directly into the nest and is then pressured straight into the nest via the gas that we use. On the left here, you've got a video of, so we've got a wireless camera that clips on the end of here as well. And then it's got a bracket on the handle that can be used with a mobile phone, so we can actually see the nest, the probe going into the nest. I'm not sure why the video stopped, but anyway, you get the idea that because it's from when you're 20 meters plus below a nest, it's very, very difficult to see where your probe is at that point. And like I say, just some images here. The tree surgeons are obviously a really core part of what we do. Because the majority of the nests are well beyond the reach of any pole, really. But we obviously get as many as we can from the ground and then go from there. We'll also use some drone technology here. We've used thermal imaging for tracking of nests and so on, but also for this. We've got various companies that are developing probes to actually release the poison into the nests as well. And we're obviously exploring that as time goes on. So obviously this is a fair size operation, and it requires us to, we're a government organisation. We've sort of got authority then, if you like, to access some sites and so on that often members of the public or volunteer groups and things would certainly struggle with. And I can tell you, being on the Network Rail track is not an easy process at all, but we do get there, and we've worked with all these various organisations, which I think has helped us build the relationships we have, and also being that we're this credible body. It sometimes takes some explaining when you're trying to speak to the army about accessing a firing range or a school that houses vulnerable persons, and you want to be tromping around their land looking for nests, but we do manage it. And I'm just going to finish off with a little case study here, which I think this is always interesting to share. This is an area down on the Kent coast called Capel le Fern that is a vast wilderness, 782 acres of triple SI site, where we were tracking nests down in here, it's a very unique environment. So you can imagine our flight lining, even with the trackers, is very difficult down in here. It is absolutely impenetrable. It's a steep cliff, steep-sided, and you can't go anywhere on it without a brush cutter or a hedge trimmer to just trim these little paths, which obviously, again, it's a triple SI site that you're working on. But our guys do it, they're there 12 hours a day, 7 days a week during the active season. And we're cutting paths up on the cliff sides and just doing what we can. And actually in 2023, we ended up eliminating and actually clearing that area completely with 7 nests out of just that one area alone, which is no mean feat, I can tell you. Hundreds of meters of paths had to be sort of cut out, crisscrossing this area just so as we could move around it. And we also employed some more novel tracking systems here as well, namely in the use of tinsel strips. We'd often glue these to hornets because they're easy to see through the canopies, or if you're above on the cliffside, you can look down over the trees as well and see the hornets a bit easier. This is just to represent how steep and thick the bush is. We've actually got myself and two colleagues here on this cliffside working. And it's just, it's a case of a process of elimination, really. You just go from one nest to the other, but you have to eliminate one before you can get onto the other. So you have to ignore all the hornets that are going in other directions, focus on one, track that back, destroy that one, move on to the next one. We were getting quite a bit of grief from social media guys that were on the top of the cliff here because, of course, they thought we weren't doing anything down there. But, of course, we were having to track 7 nests. So it took a very long time to get rid of all the hornets because we had to do one at a time. And obviously, I can't go onto social media and respond to posts when people are saying these hornets are still here, that they're not doing their job, kind of thing. Just a muddle through and get the job done. And obviously the volunteers, the Asian Hornet Action Teams, are a great resource and have played a really big role in raising awareness and obviously reporting back to us as well. And I've just got a few key points that I wanted to raise at the end here. We're still very much in the eradication phase, although the spring trapping, so the surveillance part is being dropped this in 2026. So we'll be doing more response. Well, not more, but we'll be responding as we have been, but we won't be doing any active surveillance. So I suppose you might look at that into one step for sort of maybe, moving from eradication to control. And again, it's far above my pay grade to decide what the exact future is of the policy for yellow-legged hornet. Obviously there will be new information being digested over this winter. So we're hoping they'll let us know closer into the spring next year what we will be doing. But that will be, that will unfold as it goes. 162 nests destroyed successfully in 25. So I think this is important. 100% of credible reports are responded to. So no stone is unturned when it comes to reports, as long as we've got some photo or something to go by. And also this one, 100% of nests are found if the hornets are present. So that means if we've got feeding hornets, we've tracked the hornets and we've found the nest and we've destroyed the nest 100% of the time. We're continuing to raise awareness, and I would ask you guys to step in on that as well and participate with your local Asian Hornet teams if possible, and do some active monitoring as well. We're really promoting that with the public as we go as well. So I've already spoke a bit about this. Why don't we use pest controllers to do the destructions? I get asked this a lot in various events and so on. And I think that the simple answer is, at the moment, is that isn't where our bottleneck is. We have got the trained staff, like I said. I think for a start, people thought that we were, taking, Joe Bloggs out of accounts to come and kill nests. Well, that's not what we do. We've got teams that are trained in such to do it. So at the moment we can do that and we can handle that within house. But will pest controllers be involved in the future? Absolutely. But of course it will be a different picture. It's going to be a skill set of its own. You can already see here how much the tree surgeons are involved in the destruction process for a start. Without the tree surgeons, it will be almost impossible. These are a major ecological threat. This isn't just a beekeeper problem. This is an everybody problem. These hornets are making their way in. We're kind of making headway to keep on top of them at the moment. But of course, we can only respond to the reports that we get. So if we don't get reports, we can't respond to it. Which obviously, and are we getting all the reports of every hornet in England, in the UK? Probably not. So, it's just that it is going to be a developing picture over time. So what 26 will look like and beyond, like I say, isn't really for me to it's a way above my pay grade. But I can tell you right now, we will still be responding to sightings. We will still be doing the destructions. We will be looking for, external, kind of rolling that out externally in as the need unfolds, but that will be influenced by policy at the time. So yeah, and obviously if you see anything, please report it to us via the app. If you go out to a nest to destroy, we have had pest controllers destroy the one or two here and there that actually didn't identify them correctly at the start, but we managed to get there in the end with that. But yeah, please report and if you see them, and that is just to thank you for me. And I don't know if I've got any time. I know we're running over. I may have made up a minute or two for any questions, but thank you very much.
No, thank you for that, Dan. And I appreciate you coming on doing the talk for us. So just a couple of questions. So I had a question around saying like, it looks like Asian hornets are here to stay, but I think we're still in that eradication phase.
Yeah. So we're still very much in the eradication phase. You might, like I said, I think you might see this as it's kind of eking into the control, the fact that they're saying now next year we won't be doing any active surveillance. So you could, that's probably a nod to that. But yeah, I don't, and here to stay, I'd like to think that if nothing else, we can always kind of have some level of control over them, and we're not going to be in a position like they are in other parts of Europe where they're actually running rampant. That I'd like to think the future involves some kind of, continued control for sure.
Oh, amazing. Thank you for that. We've had another question here around identifying. So the clear identifying features for yellow-legged hornet nests compared to wasp nests, if someone was to have a quick look.
Yeah, okay. Just a quickie. So what we get loads of medium wasp nests come in. Which we would absolutely rather a false, not a false report. What am I saying? An incorrect report. We'd much rather an incorrect report than no report at all. But essentially, I think the nests themselves, they're either lowish down in brambles and hedges, and they are quite light brown. They're light in colour. They're not often grey. They're often very beigey brown. And obviously you'll hopefully recognize the hornets immediately, which are the big black with the yellow band. But in the trees, which is where you are probably likely to see, especially in the autumn, they're normally almost always about 3 foot from the very tops of the tree. And it's, if it's a mature secondary nest, it's going to be the size of anywhere from a football to a big beach ball. You saw some of the images there. We got some massive ones. And like you can see oh, sorry, I'm not sharing my screen now. On that last image there, the light brown nature of it, this light brown ball high up in a tree is very distinctive. Nothing else nests up there, like even our European hornets, they're semi-cavity nesters, so they will start in a cavity quite often and then build on the outside of that. So they're often on tree trunks, where these are often more on the tips, and they're much more wavy and vulnerable, and that's quite defining about the nests.
Awesome, thank you very much. We've had a question now around like European honeybees. I know in continent there's some reports that they will sort of start fighting back. Is that something that we're sort of expecting to see in the UK as well, like that adapting behaviour?
Oh, good question. So it's going to be the same. The response of honeybees, Apis mellifera, is going to be very similar to what you're seeing in France. I mean, often what they get in areas of France is that the bees are congregating at the entrance and they're not confidently foraging in the way they normally would. So, I didn't have time to talk about this much in this presentation. Other presentations I've got a lot more about the biology, but the hornets they catch the returning foragers. So when the bees come in all full of nectar and pollen, they come in heavy and slow, and the hornets are actually hawking under colony very often, just under the hive stand, and they're actually grabbing the hornets that are returning. So in that, the European hornets tend to clump around the entrance and sort of just defends, they go into this defensive mode, and often they won't be foraging, which is when beekeepers are obviously, frustrated at the fact that their bees aren't working. But I would suggest that, the adaptations are going to be what they have been in Europe. And frankly, though, having said that, the adaptations are inadequate. To the Apis mellifera have not evolved with hornets being very predatory on them. Of course, European hornets do take the odd honeybee as well, but yeah.
Yeah, certainly not on the numbers that we see of
No.
Asian hornets. What's about 11.3 kilos of biomass, is it, per nest or something
Yeah,
like that?
yeah, it's
Quite a lot
between
of
11
bees.
and 16. Yeah, that's huge when you think about
Yeah.
that. That's massive. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have another question. So, like, how long on average, like, does it take for your the tracking process? So from report tracking goes
Yeah.
on, what's the average sort of time between you sort of finding a nest and eradicating?
Great question. I'm glad someone asked that. So to be honest, it does vary a little bit, but if we're when we're in the peak of our season, if we've got lots of calls coming in, it often takes a little while to get to 'cause what we would do is normally we respond within most people, and most of the people that have reported will tell you, if I report, normally somebody's been there within a day, and often on the same day. Maybe it's certainly within 48 hours, absolutely. But often we're there on the same day or within 24 hours. But then what we'll do then is set bait around. So we do that because, again, we want hornets. We don't want to trap hornets and kill them. We want live hornets. So we bait around the area. Then we might go away for a few days and go to other sites where we're baiting. And then we'll return back to that. And then obviously once we've got hornets feeding, so it's a kind of the question's not that straightforward. But when we actually get hornets feeding, we normally find the nest either with our manual method that I've just said, where we're actually physically tracking and we're marking hornets, we're timing them. Normally, we always find the nest within 24 hours of feeding hornets. Like once they're feeding, we normally find it within 24 hours. It's normally, it's a pretty quick process, but oftentimes it's within a few hours. We've got that good at it that we can oftentimes, we might start baiting one day, we go back there the next day and we've got feeding hornets, and by that afternoon we found the nest. And particularly with the tracker that I talked about there, the Robor Nature Tracker, in massive woodlands where we've previously had, what often would happen is we would track the hornet to a very small location within a huge woodland or somewhere very difficult to find. But then it might take us a couple of days to actually see the nest. The nests are notoriously difficult to see, even though we know where they are. So with the Robor tracker, we actually go into these areas. We can identify the tree within minutes, which might have taken us days previously. So that's been a game changer for us. So really, to answer the question, it's I would, if I had to draw an average, I would say within 24 hours. Sometimes a lot less, sometimes a little bit more.
Awesome, thank you for that. Unfortunately, we have run out of time.
Yeah,
There is one more question. If you're okay to pop into the chat and
sure.
answer that one, that'd be great. But
I'll
thank
do.
you again. I know you're super busy, and I know you've had a really busy year.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
hopefully you can have some time off, and we'll see you in the new year, hopefully.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.